Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome to Muslim Network TV's Modest Fashion Talk Show. My name is Hakeemah, and I'll be your host. Today, we're going to be talking about being unapologetic in your hijab. Sometimes, as you go through your journey as a hijabi, there are things that come in as maybe what you might think of as roadblocks. There's your career, there's changes in your life, different relationships. And how do you stay unapologetic in your hijab and keep that identity going as the changes in your life go up and down? So today we're going to be talking to the perfect guest for this type of story. We're going to be talking to Bilqis Abdul Qaadir. So Bilqis Abdul Qaadir, from a young age, she knew she wanted to be a basketball player. After picking up a ball at the age of 4 at a local YMCA, Bilqis's love for the game began. Living in a practicing Muslim household, Bilqis was to follow her religious beliefs as she grew older. She began wearing hijab and practiced modesty on the court. She parlayed her skills to a full ride scholarship to the University of Memphis, where she played for 4 years from 2009 to 2013 and graduated magna cum laude. Her goal was to continue playing basketball professionally in Europe, but quickly ended due to the International Basketball Federation, FIBA, their rule prohibiting headgear that was more than 5 inches. Unwilling to stray from her beliefs, Bilqis chose faith over basketball and became an advocate working alongside other Muslim players who began a Change.org petition. Through an op-ed published by Time, an open letter signed by Olympic, retired, and professional athletes, high-level speaking engagements, and interviews with BBC Sport and their 55 million-strong audience, Bilqis raised her voice for the next generation and effectively forced FIBA to uplift the ban. So welcome, Bilqis, to the show. Assalamu alaikum.
Salam. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited for this conversation. I'm constantly inspired by your story. I think it's one of a kind, but it's also extremely relatable. There's so many women who are going through ups and downs in their career. They're going through a whole bunch of stuff through their life. And one thing that we try to keep constant is our relationship with Allah, or maybe increase that relationship as we go along. And hijab, of course, is an act of worship. And as we go through life, we kind of want to keep that stronghold on our hijab. And I think that your story exemplifies that so beautifully. But before we get into your story itself, take us back to your childhood and tell us, how did religion play a role in your life, and how that led to kind of your relationship with your religion?
Yeah. So again, thank you for reading that long bio. I appreciate it. I know it gets a little interesting, but born and raised in Springfield, Massachusetts. The youngest of 8. I have 4 sisters, 3 brothers, alhamdulillah. And both of my parents converted to Islam. So my mother converted before my father. She was like early 20s. And then later in life, they re-met. She had 6 children. My father converted to Islam, married her with her 6 children.
MashaAllah, wow. That's
amazing. And they always knew each other. That was the crazy part. They grew up around the corner from each other. They said they dated in like middle school. Cute story, but alhamdulillah. So I'm the only child from my parents' marriage.
Okay.
But we were a basketball family. I mean, we were the only kids on the block that had a hoop in our backyard. So every day after school, our yard would be full of kids from all around the neighborhood. I mean, Black, Puerto Rican, white, Asian. Our house was like the basketball house.
Yeah.
And so I grew up watching my brothers play. My sisters played as well, but they were a little bit older and they kind of already had passed their basketball phase by the time I realized what the sport was. So alhamdulillah, the way that we learned Islam too was strictly Quran and Sunnah. I mean, when you come from a Black family whose parents are converts, there's no cultural baggage, So it was like when you reach the age of puberty, you're wearing your hijab. There's no questions. There's no concerns. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
And after every morning we woke up for Fajr, my mother and father had us in a circle reading Quran, reading different verses, people falling asleep. It was funny, this is what we did, and they instilled that culture of Islam really, really early. And so I think that I would say is what stuck with me throughout my trials and tests as I got older.
Yeah, I relate to that so much. When you said the after Fajr circles, so that's so strange that we had the same exact experience, because after Fajr, me and my plenty siblings as well, we would be sitting around, my dad teaching us like Surat Fajr at Fajr, and we're like falling asleep. It was crazy.
That's so
So, but that really, to me, when I think about why am I strong in my deen, like there's people who's going back and forth, they're taking off their hijab, they're putting it on, they're praying 3 times a day, oh, now they're praying 5, they're doing 1, like all of that, subhanallah. I mean, that is how human beings are. But also there's something about like my experience where I'm like, I never really had that kind of struggle, that kind of like, I want the deen, I don't want the deen, I want the deen. I always had that. And I feel like when I wonder why it is, it's those circles after Fajr. Like, it's my dad, it's my parents, it's my convert parents as well, who, like, once you embrace that lifestyle, it's like it's so much more beautiful than anything else, that why wouldn't you like take that, as number one priority, teach it to
fact.
your kids. Like, it's so transformative for them, and they want that for their kids. So it's the same, subhanallah.
No,
But
alhamdulillah. Now that's amazing. I love when I hear people who can completely relate to how I grew up, because sometimes you feel like, do any do other families do they do what we did? So that's refreshing to hear. Alhamdulillah.
yeah, mashallah, like that, it's the same. So now, okay, let's fast forward. So you have this strong relationship with your religion, you have a big family, like everybody's kind of doing religion together, you have that basketball hoop and everybody's like coming over and playing. Was there a specific experience that you had that made you actually fall in love with basketball, to the point that it's not just a hobby or something that you really love doing, but it's something you see yourself becoming, a professional basketball player?
Yeah, so I think it hit when I was around the age of like 12 or 13. So
Mm,
my Umi decided to homeschool all of us. She was a professional teacher herself, and she hated the public school system. I mean, everything about it, she was like, I don't want my kids in it. So she decided to homeschool all of us. And when I was 12 or 13, like I was ready. I was ready to go to school. I used to be so jealous of all the kids in the neighborhood getting off the school bus with their backpacks. I never had a backpack before. So like
yeah.
I wanted this. But at that age too, I remember my parents having a very serious conversation with me. And they basically were like, look, we can't afford college. And so you're going to have to figure out a way to get a scholarship. And that hit home for me. I was young, but I understood. I was like, okay, we don't have a lot of money. And I know we weren't like dirt poor or whatever, but I knew that I saw my parents financially struggle paying for all of my other siblings' tuitions. And I was like, what can I do to lift this load off of them? And I remember, my Umi kind of saying, you can get an academic scholarship or you can use basketball. And I'm
Mhm.
like, all right, well, I like school, but I really love basketball. So how can I be the best player in my city to stand out? So I didn't know all the ins and outs of getting recruited by a college or university, but I knew I had to be good. So before I actually went to public school, I remember after that day, it was grind mode. I was outside working on my ball handling. I
Mm,
always, share that when I'm in my bed, when I would like just be in my bed at night, I would take my ball and work on my free throw, my follow through, and I knew that I had to stand out.
mm,
And so finally, my parents decided to send me to like it was a public charter school. I was an eighth grader. And at that time, I didn't wear hijab or anything. I blended in pretty well, except for the fact that my name was weird and everybody was like, why does she have this long last name?
yeah.
But my brother went to that school as well. So he was a really good basketball player, mashallah. And so people knew that we related. So everybody expected me to play basketball, which I did.
Mhm.
Um, so at that point, I would say, basketball turned from a hobby to almost like a lifeline.
Mm,
Like I didn't get this scholarship. We weren't sure how we were going to pay for school,
yeah.
and I knew that I didn't want my parents to have to go into more debt for for another, 4 years of tuition.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I hear from that is like that moment of vulnerability that you sometimes can have with your children. I mean, we're both mothers, and like sometimes when you just come to your kid and you're just like, I mean, not to really give them your problems, but to really explain to them like what is reality. They might be too little and they might not get it completely, but what they do know is that mommy is coming to me and being honest,
Mhm.
being like, being vulnerable, just kind of treating me like we can discuss something or that we can be on a team or we can like help each other. So that moment when she came and told you this, it kind of sparked inspiration in you. It's like I'm stepping up to the plate because mommy said, if not, I probably won't go to college, and like I can do something to kind of help the situation. And it doesn't seem like it was a burden for you. It seemed like it was like, all right, I'm gonna do this. Like it's inspirational.
It gave me purpose, honestly. It
Yeah.
gave me a sense of purpose at an early age.
Mashallah. That's
Yep.
amazing. That's amazing. That's a parenting tip I'm gonna keep with me. No, for real. Like these
You-
are these are the subtleties. Yeah, these are the subtleties of parenthood that you don't know what you're doing as you kind of like go through, like treating your kids certain ways, like, positive reinforcement and things like that. You don't know what's actually gonna stick. And then when something sticks like this, you're like, wow, like those are the moments that you need to hold on to. Mashallah. So next question. So as you're going through school, now you went from homeschooling, now you're going to school, you got your backpack, you're taking the bus, you're having the full experience. As you kind of approach the age of wearing your hijab, now you went from the girl with the weird last name to like the Muslim, you know what I'm saying? And now you're visibly Muslim. And that's what hijab does for us. It takes us out of the like blending into the crowd, and it's like you're standing out, you're an athlete, you're wearing hijab, you got the name, you got the family, everything's happening. So was there ever a point where you felt like you would have to choose between your Muslim identity, wearing hijab, and being an athlete? Was there any bullying, discrimination early on?
So I wouldn't say that the bullying that I experienced was heavy to the point where I couldn't handle it.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was an eighth grader, I actually tried out for the varsity team. So I made the varsity team, alhamdulillah. And
What?
disclaimer though, disclaimer, nobody on the team could play. Like they never played a lick of basketball. So all the seniors, the juniors, the whoever,
Yeah.
it was like, it was funny. So my eighth grade year, I had made a name for myself on the court. And again, my goal was to get this scholarship. And so I was making the newspaper as an eighth grader. I was scoring all these points, mashallah. And like people knew who I was. And they would always refer to me as the girl with the long last name, right? And so
Okay.
when I did start to wear hijab my freshman year
Mhm.
is when things completely shifted for me. And I did question.
Mhm.
It wasn't even do I have to choose between the two? It was what was I gonna wear?
Yep. That's the
I was
that's
like,
the question.
and I mean, I wasn't ready to wear hijab. Like, I
Hmm.
honestly, because of this little ounce of fame that I got as this eighth grader, I was in, like, it felt good, you know?
Hmm.
So to completely change my physical nature, and of course, hijab is not only physical, am I ready to represent this faith on
Yeah.
the court, in this school? And so, subhanAllah, I was like, when it happened, when I first, reached the age of puberty, I went
Hmm.
home and I was like, Umi, homeschool me again. I'm not
Yeah.
going back.
Yeah.
Of course, this was not realistic. My mother is like, calm down,
Yeah.
figure it out. But I just honestly, I was afraid to wear my hijab. But it was crazy because when I finally went back to school, 2 weeks after I started to wear the hijab, basketball season rolled around.
Hmm.
And it always came in handy. Like when I was an eighth grader, I was homeschooled. People thought I was going to be weird. Basketball saved me. I became this phenom. And then when I started to wear my hijab, I was afraid of what people were going to say. I didn't like how I looked in it.
Hmm.
Basketball season came again. And when I played, I didn't care about anything.
Mm.
It was like when I stepped in between those four lines, it was, I'm going to try to win this game.
Mhm.
And so basketball, I felt like always was there to serve as this crutch, as this protection.
Yeah.
And even though I was taunted, I was talked about. I mean, people would say the dumbest things. One of them was, I look like Osama bin Laden's niece. I'm like, First of all, who's his niece?
Right.
I mean, like, and then my family, they were about it. So when they would say these, okay, Kesey didn't drop bombs on them, like my family would say something.
Right.
It was a mess in
Flip
the
the
stands.
script.
It was a mess in the stands. But
Yeah.
alhamdulillah, like, um, again, I think basketball kept me from having to make that tough decision of like, oh, if I wear my hijab, I can't play. I loved it so much that nothing was going to keep me from it.
Mashallah. That's amazing. That's amazing. I love that. Um, yeah, I mean, a lot of times there are some like things that seem to be simple, but it might be a roadblock for some people. Like that question of what do you wear, you know? And a lot of times when you're hijabi, there's this idea that modesty and being an athlete, whether that's swimming, basketball, like whatever it is, it's gonna be the reason why you can't. It's because like how can you stay modest while doing this like athletic sport? So mashallah, I'm glad that it wasn't even like a factor, like you went on the court to play and all those other things was like secondary, mashallah. So we'll be back after the break and we'll have more with Bilqis Abdul Qaadir. Welcome back to the show. We're here with Bilqis Abdul Qaadir, and today's show is all about being unapologetic in your hijab as you pursue different paths in life and things go up and down. How do we keep our relationship with our hijab strong? So, Bilqis Abdul Qaadir, we were talking earlier about the fact that you had just started wearing your hijab, and you had been a star eighth grade player on the varsity team, and you were on the court to win the games, right? Now, let's just talk about the accolades that built up from the eighth grade through the high school through college, right? So I'm just going to remind you in case you might have forgot like how good you are, Um, let's just look at this. You scored 3,070 points in your high school career, the all-time scoring record in Massachusetts at that time. You were the 2009 Gatorade Player of the Year, and you continued to set records in college where you had a 4-year scholarship. We mentioned that. Your accolades go on and on. How proud are you of all of those numbers? I'm sure I've missed a lot of bullet points in that resume. Um, how proud of you are those? How proud are you of those numbers? And not only did you do all of that because of your skill and all of that, but you also did that while wearing hijab. Talk about how proud you are of those things.
Mashallah. Honestly, I feel like I never think about it
Mm,
in the way that you just asked that question.
yeah.
And I guess in those moments, even when it happened, I felt like I couldn't embrace it and relish in the moments because I was always preparing for what was next.
Mm,
And I feel like as an athlete, there's really no time to just be like, yeah, I just scored 3,000 points. Because as soon as you make it to college, all of that gets erased. Because now
mm,
you have to earn your spot again. Now you have to show at the next level that you can do what you did in high school. And it's not the same. So subhanAllah, I feel like when people even read the bio and do what you did, um, I'm like, man, I did do that.
yeah, you
Like,
did
I
that.
did, yeah, and it's like it just makes me just think a lot even more because
Mhm.
he gave me that talent and that I don't even know because it took a lot of strength. Like it took a lot of strength to get through it. And when I think back in retrospect, like man, I was scoring all these points. How was I doing it? Because I know my body now. I'm like, there's no way. So
Yeah.
I just honestly say Alhamdulillah, and I'm more excited now to share this with my kids.
Hmm.
So when
Hmm.
they're old enough to understand and I can open a book or I can show them a video, I just can't wait to see what they think. and
Yeah.
to see that, man, I was kind of a superwoman back when I was younger. You guys,
Yeah.
I'm telling you. So I
Yeah.
think that's what I take from it now.
Alhamdulillah. I love the humility here, but I also, I relate to that as well. Just even just motherhood, like just becoming a mother is like a completely different person than you were 10 years ago. And sometimes you look back and you're like, dang, like I really used to do those types of things. Mashallah. But I love that you said the word alhamdulillah. And we say that so lightly, but recently I was listening to some lectures about how important it is to say those words. And like there's a hadith about, that the word alhamdulillah fills the scales, like and saying mashallah and saying inshallah, like those words, they fill your scales, like they are heavy. So for you to remind, yourself and the audience and everyone watching that like these things are not from you. These are from Allah, right? Allah instilled those talents in you. So the best thing you can do with those accolades is to, absorb it, have your moment, take your flowers, but remember to say Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. So bring us to the point where you heard about the FIBA ban, right? That 5-inch headgear ban, right? And of course, our hijabs are more than 5 inches. So I don't know why five, like why five? Why that?
Actually, it makes sense though. So I was coming out of my senior season. Most people don't know that when I finished at the University of Memphis, I actually I had an injury as a freshman in college. So I had a year's worth of rehab to recover from this ACL tear. And when you play college and you miss because of a injury, you get that year back. So I left Memphis, graduated undergrad, and then went to a different university. So I went to Indiana State University where I was able to play my last basketball season. And I was actually able to pursue a free master's degree too, alhamdulillah, because that was really like Allah is so kind and merciful. I was devastated when I tore my ACL, but when I was able to start my master's and get it done for free, I was like, okay, Allah, I get why you made me go through that, back as a freshman. Um, so come out of my senior season, I played really, really well my senior season, like to the point where I knew that I was going to get a good contract as a rookie to go play in the professional FIBA leagues. So I have an agent. The agent, of course, works for you, tries to get you the best deal, tries to get you the best money, or the most money. And randomly, I can't remember if this was a phone call or email, but my agent reaches out and she's basically like, FIBA has this rule against headgear. You can't wear anything larger than 5 inches, which is a headband. That's where the 5 inches comes from. So I'm like, okay, tell them that I'm Muslim. Like in college in the NCAA, all I needed was a waiver, which still didn't make any sense. But the waiver basically stated I'm Muslim, so I cover my body, right? So archaic. I can't wait till these waivers are done with. But I assumed that that's all I needed for the FIBA leagues. Lo and behold, that was not the case. So when we reached out to FIBA initially, we were like, oh, Bilqis Abdul Qaadir was actually a Division 1 player. She wore her hijab. And even back then, I didn't wear my hijab like this way on the court. I wore it in a turban style. Number one, it was for two reasons, and I'm gonna be real here. One was because I didn't feel comfortable wearing my hijab, I would say the traditional style. Number two, there was no sport hijab back then, so we didn't really know how I should have worn it because I knew I couldn't wear pins. The two-piece ones were like too hot and too tight. But there were personal reasons why I wore it as a turban style, and then there were athletic reasons why I wore it. So anyway, um, we showed them pictures of what I wore. We showed them that it doesn't like fall off unless somebody knocks it off or it gets pushed back. Um, we were like, she's Muslim. She's been wearing it for the past 4 or 5 years in college. It's fine. FIBA responds and says they want to keep the games religiously neutral. And so when they said that, we were like, religiously neutral? What does that even mean? So when we kind of looked deeper into it, they were like, okay, they want everybody on the court to be religiously the same. doesn't make any sense, because there's players who have biblical scriptures of tattoos, prophet Jesus tattooed on their arms, which we all know those can be big and gaudy. So people represented their faith on the court regardless. Some even wore chains with like a cross hanging from it. So when we wrote back to FIBA explaining, well, this doesn't make any sense. People who have these tattoos should have to cover it up. XYZ. They knew we made a point. They respond and say she can hurt people with the scarf. Not only can she hurt other people, she can also hurt herself. And so when you put safety into sport, like, it's hard to get around it. And they knew this was a smart move. Like, these people, they're a huge organization. They work in the Olympics. I mean, this is they knew what they were doing, and they were very strategic with using safety. And when they said that, I was kind of like, of course I was taken aback. I'm like, I can hurt people? Like, you can watch a video of me play and see that really, I used to get whipped in the face by long weaves, braids, ponytails. My eye would be watery. The ref would have to call a timeout. Like, you would think having your hair wrapped up in some form or fashion is safer, which it was. But no. And so that's when everything kind of started, personally and, of course, career-wise.
That's it, like, or did you still feel like at that moment you could change it? Like, no, they just don't understand.
Yeah, no, right. And that's exactly what you said. I'm like, no, they just don't get it. So I'm like, let's just speak to somebody else at FIBA, because I was talking to like the communications, whoever. We realized that this organization was like a secret service. I could not get to any higher ups. We were emailing, we were trying to call international numbers. I mean, my agent actually was even based in Switzerland, where FIBA was. She couldn't even reach anyone. So still, when I still had this optimism, I was like, I'm going to be able to play. Like, this is nothing. When you're pursuing a rookie year or season, you have 3 months. So I graduated in May. I have June, July to the end of August to sign a contract. And so right now it's the end of May. I'm like, I got time. So we're researching. June goes by.
Yeah.
I'm still training. I'm still working out. July comes. I'm getting a little nervous because I haven't talked to anybody yet, again, since that last conversation with FIBA. And I'm like, oh, it's fine. Like, my agent's working. I know some people. August hits. And this is when it gets sticky for me, because I had started my master's degree. And so I had a 2-year program. I was going to cut it short because I knew that I was going to go play. Like, I was like, school can wait. I can always finish this degree. It's fine. But because I didn't have basketball, my parents, my family were like, you need to make a smart decision. Like, you're getting this degree for free. Do you really want to risk it, knowing that you can't play immediately? And so that was the first tough decision that I had to make. Like, I had to sign, the papers to finish my degree in August. So I remember just listening to my Omi and my older sister. She was like, he's like, get the education. You're going to be able to play. Even if you wanted to stop playing because FIBA comes through, then you'll be all right. And so I'm like, all right, I'll go back to school. So, but I wasn't even focused on school.
So what I like about this is that it shows like there's a lot of perseverance here. So they went from May to August, and you thought maybe August was going to be the decision time. And then it took that 4 years, but then what happened after the 4 years? What was the decision?
So after I sacrificed my career, basically, I started doing a lot of speaking engagements and news articles, just trying to get the story out. That's what it was about. People didn't know that this rule even existed, because I would have been the first hijabi to play at the pro level. And after finally reaching this organization in Switzerland, which was a neighboring org next to FIBA, this lawyer who was like out of nowhere was like, I want to help you. He knew a lot of old Olympic retired athletes. professional athletes, and he put together this letter, had all these athletes sign it in support of my situation. And he put it out in Switzerland. So it hit Switzerland news, and FIBA didn't like that. So they didn't like the negative press. People, of course, in Switzerland didn't know this was going on either. And alhamdulillah, it took the negative media to have FIBA revisit this rule. And let me tell you, what was most frustrating when they revisited the rule was that they approved everything that I wore in the game, Hakeemah. Everything that I wore. The hijab has to be black. It can't have any pins in it. It can't be have any obstructive objects in it, which clearly I'm not going to hide. Like, come on.
Yeah.
The leggings or the pants have to be black. The long sleeve shirt that you wear under the jersey has to match the color of the jersey. Every
that you are already doing. I'm so frustrated. Like this, I'm literally like my heart is beating so fast. Like I'm in the moment, you know? Subhanallah.
And yeah, so but even before the 4 years happened, when I went back to school and I actually was 6 months into my second year of my master's, I realized that I wasn't going to play.
Yeah.
And that's when, or even before I realized I wasn't going to play, I was even considering taking my hijab off. And I'm like, there's no way that I trained my entire life to be this player, to be told I can't play because of my hijab.
Yeah.
And it was like the hijab brought me it made me stand out. I know it definitely helped me get this scholarship because I was different, you know, so it drew attention. And then, of course, my skills backed it up, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was like, why is Allah testing me with something that I tried to do right my entire career?
Right.
You know? And who am I to question Allah and His will? But I was torn. I was so torn. Like, some people would even say, like, just take off the scarf. These are non-Muslims, right?
Yeah.
But they were like, take off the scarf for the game and then put it back on after.
Yeah.
And so my immediate response to these people was always like, no, you know, the hijab means more than that. I can't just take it off, put it back on. That's not how it works. Let me tell you, when I would go home at night and I was thinking about, like, I would be in a country where nobody knows me. There was no streaming back then. So the games weren't like, you know, my parents wouldn't be able to watch. I would just tell them about the game after. I considered it. Like, Shaitan was working.
Ooh, Shaitan. Subhanallah. Okay, Bilqis, hold that thought. We're going to come right back after the break, and we're going to talk about that battle between, like, your thoughts and the Shaitan and, like, you know, the deen over dunya type of thing. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to the show. Today we're talking with Bilqis Abdul Qaadir about her decision to keep her hijab in the face of a FIBA ban, which banned her from becoming a professional athlete. And we were just at the point in the story where she was talking about those nights that she would be laying in her bed, thinking about the changes in her life at that point. Does she keep her hijab on and give up her career? Or does she take off her hijab in order to pursue her career? And there's so many people who struggle with keeping your Islamic identity, keeping that hijab on, keeping your religion tight, or do you pursue your career? And recently I was listening to a lecture, and there was just a clip of it that I could listen to over and over and over. Whenever you feel like you're a little bit shaky, the shaitan is whispering to you. You're not really sure if you want to be as visible of a Muslim anymore. You don't want to be as strong of a Muslim anymore. There was a lecture from Sheikha Haifa Yunus, and she was asked the question by a woman who was a teacher. She said that, you know, when she goes to school, she misses 3 of her salats. So Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, she's got to make that up when she gets home. And day after day after day, she's starting to feel guilty that she's choosing her day at school, working over her salah. And another issue she was dealing with was that she couldn't wear her hijab at work. She would wear it to work, take it off while at work, and then put it back on. And she was just feeling that there was no way that she could actually keep her deen and pursue her career. And Dr. Yunus almost immediately, and with conviction, she said, give up your career. Pick a different job. There's nothing more important than keeping your salah, your 5 daily prayers on time. Making it up every single day is not worth it. Your hijab, keep your hijab on and get a different job. That Allah is the provider. He is the one who is Ar-Razaq, and He's the one who's going to give you even more if you were to give up and sacrifice for His sake. And I see that in Bilqis's story. So let's go back to those nights when you had those thoughts. During the day, you might have been like, no, yeah, I got it. Like, Umi, I got it. I'm not going to take it off, whatever. But at night, that's when the shaitan comes in. Oh, you can take it off just for a couple years. It's going to be okay. So talk about how you got over that and how important, like that statement that we always say, deen over dunya, deen over dunya. Some people have to live that. Some people actually you had to live that. It's not just in small decisions. It was the one, maybe the biggest decision of your life. Talk about how you got through that and why deen over dunya is so important to you.
SubhanAllah, it's interesting. Every time I speak and give a lecture or a speech, whatever, I always mention this critical point in which I honestly chose deen over dunya, right? And it was actually at night, like you were mentioning, when I would go home and I'm thinking about, I have to make a decision. Like, I'm not happy in school. My parents don't know that I'm even battling this, taking off my hijab or questioning Islam as a whole. I have family members who are Jewish, who are Christian. And I was like, maybe I need to go see what they know in their faith, because it might make sense for me in the situation that I'm in.
Yeah.
And subhanAllah, I was just trying to make faith fit what I wanted in the dunya.
Yeah.
And so I remember it was one night where I was like really in a dark space, questioning everything. I'm not who I should have been. I'm hanging out with the wrong people in school. Like, it was a struggle for me at that time. And I remember thinking, like, regardless of me questioning Islam, I just knew that I needed to pray. And the only way I knew how to pray was as a Muslim, of course, right? So I remember going into this prayer, and I know it was a night prayer. I can't remember if it was like Maghrib or Isha. But I remember standing up, making my intention, and it was the most sincerest intention that I had ever made in any of my prayers. And I had been Muslim my entire life. Mm-hmm. And I remember, like, vividly, Allah, like, I need an answer, right? I need an answer. And it chokes me up every time I talk about this prayer, because it changed my life, y'all. It changed my life. And so I go into the prayer, I'm reciting whatever, go into sujood. And wallahi, I feel like I got spiritually stuck to the point where I knew I could physically get up from sajda, but I was stuck. And as I'm in the position, I had recently, subhanAllah, I had recently learned that sujood is the closest to Allah, right? Mm-hmm. And in this position, you ask Allah for what you want, you thank Him for what you have, whatever the case is, this is the position where you need to be, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm in sujood, and all of a sudden I start crying. And I'm like, what? I've never cried in any of my prayers. Mm-hmm. I'm like, what is this? Sometimes I feel like when I would pray Taraweeh, you see your aunties or your uncles, whatever, just bawling. And I'm like, what are they feeling? I want to feel that. I want to cry too, right?
Yeah.
And subhanAllah, like, crying in sujood. And I swear to you guys, I physically felt every negative feeling, every question being pulled out of my heart. Hmm. If I could go back and feel that feeling again, I would pay any amount. I would do anything, because Allah made me a Muslim in that prayer. But I have been Muslim my entire life. Mm-hmm. And subhanAllah, it was like I was at a point where I chose Islam. Because when you're born into it, you don't get the option to learn about this new religion, to fall in love with this new religion. It's like, this is what you're born with. Alhamdulillah, it's a beautiful gift. But people who convert or revert, they get to live a life and then all of a sudden say, I want to learn about Islam, or I fell in love with it. And I feel like most of us, or many of us, will go through a test where Allah is asking us to choose Him. And that's what taking away basketball was for me. And that's Allah saved my life. Saved my life. Because subhanAllah, after I made that prayer, no lie, you all, things started happening. These signs that I was getting, I was like, okay, Allah, I can't even ignore it anymore. I get it.
Yeah.
My hijab is staying on. I'm a Muslim. He was just placing these opportunities in front of me that I could not walk away from. And the first one was speak at a Sunday school. I randomly got a call 2 weeks after this life-changing salah. I get a random call from a Sunday school. Can Bilqis come speak to these kids? And I'm like, what? What do you mean speak to them? What do I say? Like, I didn't know this.
Yeah.
And when I went to this Sunday school, these little girls, especially the little girls, there were boys there too, but these little girls sitting crisscross applesauce, looking at me like I was this famous. It was so weird. And I'm like, what is happening? What is going on? And this one little girl, I remember her saying, I want to be a basketball player just like you. And I'm going to wear my hijab.
Oh,
and I was like, okay, and when I left that little speaking engagement, I was like, Allah, like, I can't be a hypocrite. I can't be going through all of this stuff behind closed doors and then say all of this cliche stuff to these kids. Oh, be strong in your Islam. Don't take your hit. I had to live it.
Yeah.
And it just, things like that kept happening. And I was like, all right. And that's what made me find even more strength to battle FIBA and, essentially work to change that rule. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Wow. I mean, I almost cried when I was holding it back because that moment, that salah, I don't think I've ever heard you talk about that prayer. That moment of clarity when you said you chose to be a Muslim. I thought about what is the meaning of being a Muslim? Like, what is a Muslim? What is the name? What does that word mean? And it's someone who truly submits to the will of Allah. Like like people say, just let God take the wheel. Like just do what you need to do with my life. Like, use me in the way that needs to be used, that I need to be used. And I think that your purpose became so clear in that moment, right? Like, there was a moment of clarity, and to have your face on the ground, that's the most humble place you could be, submitting to the will of, and when we come up from that sujood, what do we say? Allahu Akbar. Like, Allah is greater than any of my desires, any of my like will to do this. Like, Allah is truly in control. We submit to His will. And look at how, like, the impact that you've had. Like, you've had so many speaking engagements. You've had a documentary made out of from you wrote a book. Like, you are doing so much, mashallah, Allahumma barik, that this is like, as you see your qadr like unfolding in front of you, like, you truly know what Allah has in store for you. Like, you only know as it unfolds, but Allah had this plan before He even created. He created our souls first. SubhanAllah. I'm so sorry.
Thanks.
I'm going on and on because, like, people need to hear this. Like, this is life-changing for people's purpose in their life. Like, some people are so misguided. They don't know what to do. They really don't know what to do. And you have to be humbled in front of your Creator for Him to just do what needs to be done with you. SubhanAllah. Okay, let's regroup. let's regroup. You talked about some of the rewards that you've had, the Sunday school, like the girls sitting crisscross applesauce, like that almost took me out because I'm thinking about my girls when it was February of the pandemic year, and I was homeschooling, and I was like, I'm going to do Black History Month the way it should be done, right? And I'm going to choose all of these amazing people to teach my little 3-year-old and 4-year-old about. And I taught them about you. I taught them about Bilqis Abdul Qaadir and how she changed the rule. This is what they say. They say Bilqis Abdul Qaadir changed the rule, and she and she made it so that people can wear hijab and play basketball. And they went to a basketball camp, and they remembered that story from 2 years ago or however. Subhanallah, like you are really changing a lot.
That
So let's
means
talk. Alhamdulillah. Talk about some of the rewards that you like. Let's talk about, when you choose Allah, what are some of those things that when he says what he will provide for you from ways that you could have never fathomed? Talk about that.
honestly, and I think that's what kind of got me just choked up.
Yeah.
Thinking about what you came from and knowing just the mercy of Allah, because half the time I feel like Allah, I don't even deserve this. That's how I feel sometimes. Like, this is too much. What do I do with it? I don't want to mess it up. So there's even a lot of weight that comes with the good.
Mm-hmm.
And so it always reminds me, and I think the greatest reward that I get from it is not even about the speaking engagements. It's not even about the book that, alhamdulillah, that I was able to write. It's not about any of that. It's about always being reminded to renew your intentions and to make sure that you do things with sincerity. Because you can get so caught up in the money. I mean, the money, subhanAllah, like when I first got paid to do my first real speaking engagement, I was like, they're paying me to do this? Are you serious?
Yeah.
Well, like, it became my job.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is too much money. Like, no, I'm only talking about my story, what Allah put me through, But
Yeah.
people, all of that. And it's like, you can get so caught up in the dunya again after going through the test that you've already been through. You already fought through the struggles. Allah will give you good, but he's going to test you again, right? And so I think the rewards, of course, in this life are always beautiful. Whether it's being financially stable with, doing what you love, being able to be an inspiration, and people always, praising you for the things that you did. And it's always a reminder for me, wallahi, Bilqis, this is not from you. This is from Allah. Even a little ounce of me is like, oh man, that felt good for somebody to say.
Yeah.
Something in me doesn't always allow me to, I enjoy it, but it's good that I don't fully enjoy, because I always want to be mindful of being sincere, and stepping into whatever I do with sincerity. And that's what I take from it, is always reminded of Allah's mercy and kindness, because I'm like, sis, I came from Allah knows. Oh, he protected me from so much, so many tests. And I'm just like, being here on this, like you saying what you said and me just breaking down in tears, I'm like, that was my reminder again,
Yeah.
So anyway, if that all makes sense, it's the sincerity the reminder of being sincere and, keeping my intentions pure is the greatest reward from everything that I've been through.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. So we'll take a break, we'll regroup, and we'll come back with some final words from Bilqis and myself. Welcome back to the show. We have had such an amazing discussion, a groundbreaking discussion with Bilqis. And every time I hear her speak, it is just another part of the story that just pierces the heart. Most recently, Bilqis, you became an author, mashallah. And you have a new book, Lion from the Inside, or Lion on the Inside.
Lion on the Inside.
Lion on the Inside. It's a children's book, and it's available for pre-order, right? So we're going to definitely plug that for you. What does it mean to you to have authored a book about your life, in terms of your legacy, what you leave behind as, we're going to be in this world for a blink of an eye. And people who, read about us later on, that's a part of our legacy, like we're leaving behind something. So to have that book, especially for the youth, for little kids to read about you, um, how does that feel, and what is that legacy that you do want to leave behind?
So here's the book, actually, right here. Alhamdulillah. Oh, here. Um, the that question, subhanallah. So I was at my first book event last, I think, almost 2 weeks ago, and it was this older white woman. She might have been. She had a small accent, so I don't really know where she was from,
Mm-hmm.
but she worked for the Library of Congress, so right on Capitol Hill in DC.
Okay.
And so she's randomly walking, and I'm naturally a hustler, so I have my book, and I'm like, her tag says Library of Congress. Let me go give her this book. So I walk up to her and we talk a little bit, and I say, I have a children's book, so on and so forth. So this woman, you could tell she loves books. She's a librarian, mashallah. Like as soon as she looked at the cover, you guys, she was brought to tears.
Wow.
She read the first page and she said, this book is like poetry.
Oh, wow.
And when I briefed her, and then she asked, is this you? Like, is this book about you? And I was like, yeah. And she said, it was so wise. She said, you told me about your basketball and how you couldn't play. She said, I'm sure you would have been great on the court if that was, if that was what you were supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
She said, this book just immortalized you.
Wow.
And I started crying, of course, because I didn't think about it that way. Like you said, like leaving a legacy.
Yeah.
And again, now that I'm a mother and now that I see the impact books have on my sons, subhanAllah, they love them.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that, and I posted this on Instagram not long ago, the fact that my 3-year-old can recite this book word for word, and he has learned, mashallah, the importance of, now he sees me, I put on my hijab, he goes, Ami, your hijab is so pretty today, because of what he learned from this book.
Yeah.
Like, subhanAllah, like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
There was a reason I co-authored with this woman from Canada. She's actually a white Jewish woman.
Mm.
The beauty of us coming together with the history of Islam, Judaism, all of it, I felt like was groundbreaking in itself.
Yeah.
And the fact that our young Black girls or Black boys can pick up this book and see a Black girl on the cover with the ball in hijab was like, for me, it was next level. And I just pray that it leaves a lasting impression like it did on my 3-year-old, for him to say, or for these kids to say to their ummis, like, your hijab is beautiful and it's not ugly.
Yeah.
And so that's what I pray, pray for about this book, inshallah.
Inshallah. So tell the people watching where they can get the book, where they can follow you, where they can book you for the next speaking engagement, all of that stuff. Give you all your plugs.
So the book, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, almost any bookstore. If you just Google Lion on the Inside and type in my name. My Instagram is Bilqis Abdul Qaadir. I started a TikTok, but I'm not ready yet. I have to step into it full-fledged, and I'm just not ready. But other than that, I'm on all platforms, and you can watch my documentary Life Without Basketball for free on Tubi. It's on every platform except for Netflix. So make dua that one day Netflix is like, oh, let's put her documentary on here. But yeah, and I'm always available for bookings, and inshallah, this year is kind of booked up, but I still travel and do speaking engagements, basketball clinics for women and girls. So yeah, inshallah.
You have your basketball girls hoop. Muslim
yes.
Please talk about that. Yes.
Yeah. So my nonprofit Muslim Girls Ball 2, which has been just recently renamed to Ball 2 and not Hoop 2.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still confusing it myself. So anyway, alhamdulillah. But I'm doing my first annual overnight retreat. This is the first of its kind. So honestly, when I pitch this to communities, moms are like, I'm not knowing my daughter can't spend the night. And I'm like,
yeah.
So it's okay because we're working on making this, it's a safe space. We're in the Musalla. We have tons of chaperones, alhamdulillah, but no, it's going to be, we have over 50 girls registered, girls and women. So from ages 12 to like 35.
Yeah.
They're coming to play in a basketball tournament. There'll be workshops. There'll be paint and sips, bonfires. So we just want to bring our sisters and our girls together in faith, in physical activity, and of course, always in remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think it's going to be, inshallah, it'll change the narratives of us as Muslim women being active and being able to have fun and having a retreat that we can enjoy, together. So it's called Hooping in Faith, and it's happening July 21st through 23rd, inshallah. So this month, and I'm like overloaded with stuff, but inshallah, make dua that it goes well.
Inshallah, I pray that it goes even better than you ever imagined. Inshallah. Thank you so much, Bilqis, for being with us today. I really, really appreciate, these inspirational stories. Yours being one of the top of my list. It's like you and like Salman al-Farsi or something. Like it's like mashallah. To me, what I see in your story is representation. Like me and you are very, similar. Young Black Muslim women growing up in America, daughters of converts. We had those Fajr circles. Like it's like there's so much and it's when you see yourself in someone else, that's when you can truly just like absorb that inspiration, and it can really help to like guide your life. That's why I really love that you wrote this children's book, because when I buy this book and I give it to my daughters, it's just going to be another layer on top of those, those lessons I've already taught them about you, and women like you. I've taught them about Ibtihaj Muhammad. These are stories that need to be told, and they need to inspire for generations. So I want to thank you so much for being here. And to wrap up, final words from me. If you may have heard a little bit of my story in other places, maybe through Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or wherever, I had a similar story to Bilqis. And that's another layer to that representation. And I know that there's a lot of people out there who have similar stories of pursuing something in life. For me, it was medical school, pursuing something in life. Like those who are watching today, are you pursuing something in your life? Is it school? Is it a career? Is it a relationship? Is it something where part of it looks pristine? It looks like it's the best thing. It's going to make you money. It's going to bring you, children. It's going to be the best thing for you. But a part of that is giving up something about your Muslim identity, about your conviction to this deen, about your akhirah over your dunya. And for me, that pursuit of medical school meant that I would have to compromise something about my deen I was not willing to do. And so I gave that up. And you out there watching, you might be in that same situation. You have to give up something. And will it be worth it for you? And, when you see someone having given up something and reap the rewards the way that Bilqis, mashallah, has reaped them. And I love that she emphasized the rewards not being like, the checks and the flowers and all that stuff. That's great. But the rewards being those spiritual rewards, those things that give you higher purpose. It gives you a greater intentionality as you go through your life. Those are the rewards that we really want in this dunya, because those are the ones that are going to affect us much better than the checks and the glam and all that stuff. That's going to be, what helps our scales to be heavy on the good side on Yawm al-Qiyamah. So inshallah, ya Rab. So again, thank you so much for watching the show. We hope you really enjoyed our discussion with Bilqis. And tune in next week, inshallah. We'll be talking again with more phenomenal Muslim women about their journey with hijab through the modern age on the Muslim Network Modest Fashion TV show.